I hope we will enjoy his presentation. Thank you very much indeed.
Can you see me?
Yes,
Yeah,
we
okay.
can see it. Thank you.
You can come in front if you...
No, it's okay. That's fine.
Right, everyone. Assalamu alaikum and good evening. My name is Ijaz Rasool, as Brother Hanif has introduced me. And I've got a lot of interest in the Quran for the last over 20 years. And essentially it is, I worked on it day and night, 24/7. And because I found the book extremely fascinating, not only from an academic point of view, but from an intellectual point of view. Of course, as a guidance, it has its own significance, which is exclusive. But even if we do not wish to have guidance, we don't have to have. And the way our life goes, we can continue on that. And there is a lady called, her name is Lindsay Hazelton, I think. She's on the YouTube.
Yes.
And she's from a Jewish background, and she's done a lot of study. If you get a chance to see her presentation, it's quite fascinating. And that is what interests me as well, that when somebody sees this book as something which human beings cannot think or human intellect cannot conceive, and they find it fascinating as well, even if they don't accept the guidance. So keep that thing in mind. Today's presentation is essentially on this book, What is Islam, which myself and my wife have translated into English from Urdu. The book was originally written by Mr. Parvez from Lahore. He's done a lot of work on the Quran. In fact, he made my life very easy, because where he stopped or where he finished it, we can always take it forward from there, assuming that we have understood what he's written. The book has 17 chapters, and I will go through it step by step, and I will also go through some of the basic concepts of the Quran. This is how the book looks like, and it's on a cost price. It's available on Amazon. It's available free as well, and all those are given within the book itself. If you have any questions, feel free on that. I'll leave my card as well. Some of you might already have, so you can always come back and question me and ask clarification if there is any doubt. Now, a book is outlined, as I said, in about 17 chapters. The first chapter is Basis of Deen. It's an introduction. It broadly throws light on the whole structure of Deen. Quran is what the concepts and the system given by Quran is not religion. It's not madhab. It is Deen. So do not please mix the two. And that is where the distinction lies. Madhab means a path, or some kind of a way. Deen is a system. Deen, when we say system, like ism, it is like capitalism, like communism, like socialism. So it is a system. So if you keep that in mind, all the concepts which I'll be discussing, these will become very clear. And keep it in mind the difficulties of the capitalism, and then see what Quran presents you as an alternative system. Human personality is discussed, that what exactly defines a human being. Are we just the physical body or something inside us? Why do we think? Why do we have intellect? Why do we reason? Why do we make decisions? We are the only intelligent creation in the visible universe. Why? What is my place in this universe? That is the root of guidance. Human intellect looks for, whatever we do, we look for reason to do it. If we are not convinced, you all are convinced that there might be some benefit to come to this meeting, and you have come along. But if you're not convinced, you won't be here. I won't be here all the way from Glasgow and translating these books unless I see some advantage in it. So we have to somehow convince our intellect. And this is, I've discussed in slight detail later on, and the book has discussed it in detail. And that is something you must go through it. To convince yourself that in this once only life, why should I do something different from what I have been doing so far? It's business. Human intellect and deen. And what is the relation between the system which the Quran projects and our intellect? Again, it goes back to the same, what is the benefit I will get out of it? If there is no benefit, you will never ever go in that direction. This is inbuilt into human beings. We want to do business. Then the implementation and functioning of law, how the laws work, how the laws in the outer world are working, how the laws within us are working. Everything is following laws. If we are not looking for laws, we will not find laws. And this goes back to the intellect thing. The law of requital is every cause has an effect. You must have heard it, it's in the Bible as well. What we sow, so shall we reap. But are we convinced? Because sometimes we see that what we sow, we may not get it. In the physical sense, yes. If I put a seed of wheat in the ground, wheat will come out, not barley will come out. But in our own life, we seem to get away with some of the things which we do. Do we really? Salvation. Now this is a very religious concept where one says that we cannot achieve something unless, whatever concept of God we have, He has mercy on us. And this aspect I will slightly go in more detail later on. And there is a whole chapter on that, on salvation. That what is the religious concept of salvation and how it is different from the achievement detailed in the Quran. Life forever and mortality. Death is a fact of life. We don't want to die unless want to commit suicide if we're so hopeless. But can we live beyond our physical death? And how can we convince ourselves of that life? Is it possible to convince ourselves right here in this life? And what are the consequences of that? How does our intellect get convinced about that life? What changes that conviction brings in our behavior, in our attitude, in our outlook? We'll discuss that very briefly. There is a complete book on that. I've got some copies with me if anyone is interested in life in the hereafter. It's a fascinating subject in its own right. The principle of development of the human self. If we have a self, I'll go through it, what exactly is self, and I'll relate it to your own self. That if it is developing, how do I know it is developing? Do I get a better person? How do I know that I'm a better person? The system of sustenance. Now, economics is very important, as all of us know, that everything is discussed about economics. All the time you hear about stocks, you hear about changes in the currency value, and you discuss it. And nowadays in Britain, for example, a lot of discussion is taking place in Brexit. Now, we should look at it that what system of sustenance Quran puts forward. And does it appeal to human intellect? The political system, we talk about democracy, we talk of dictatorships, we talk of autocracy, royalty, and those kind of things. And people say, oh, this is not against Islam, and this is Islam, and democracy is Islam. We will look into it very briefly, that how do you get somebody into position in the political system, and can we get him or her through democracy or not? Now, this is very important, because you must understand that there should be a system which should bring the right people forward. And you must have seen that all our life I have seen it, people are never happy with any individual who is elected and goes up, because they say one thing and do another thing. Why do they do that? Two types of values. We talk about values as well. You must have heard that every country says, oh, these are our values, and others' values are not as good as our values are. And then within UNO, we have seen it there, we talk of human rights. So Quran talks of two types of values as well, the relative values and the permanent values. Not as such under the topic of values, but we can deduce them. We can take them out and use them for our benefit. how we do that. And last is women. Woman is treated like a second-rate citizen within the human community. And I'm sure, I don't know how ladies feel about it. Every religion has degraded women. And woman is a burden. She is here on this planet to serve the man. And man, because of physical prowess, hasn't given that position to a woman. And I will very briefly touch on that. And there is a complete last chapter on that. It is a mind-blowing concept what the Quran gives us. Everything is right there. Understand it and then look around and say where the woman places in the universe in terms of as a creation and as a thinking being in her own right. It's unfortunate that we haven't really gone into this book. It is mesmerizing. Right. Very quickly, I'll go over it because firstly I thought, mostly discussions like this assume that there is a God. And then we go forward. Because if somebody is atheist and those who are theists, they look down upon that. And there's a lot of debate going on that. So I thought, let's go through some of the facts on that and then make a decision. Because this is important that what type of a God or what sort of a concept we have. First is universe around us is a fact. We can't deny it. There are people who say it is illusion. You can ignore them, it is a fact. You can touch it, you can feel it, you can perceive it. The rain comes, the sun shines, the moon comes out. Now we know that there are galaxies as well, and there might be even creation beyond just like us in other planets. So the universe is there, it is a fact. The life on this planet, we know it exists. We don't know if there is any other planet within the solar system which has life. Our own physical self and our mind looking for some meaning. We look for a meaning of life, but I know I exist. As I stand in front of you, I'm talking, I'm hearing, so I know I exist and I've got intellect. I'm not insane. So you all can relate to me and I can relate to you. There are events which take place in our life and we want to interpret them. And we interpret it according to our own understanding. Sometimes we can't because we don't have facts. And that is where, in the previous one, they say God of the gaps. If you listen to the arguments of atheists, and in a way they are right. They say where the religious people cannot understand something, they put it in the pocket of God, and they say God did it. Instead of making effort to find out what exactly happened, why it happened, they say God did it. I don't need to make an effort to understand it. That is associated with fear, with uncertainty and vulnerability. We are scared of death because we have self-preservation. Those instincts are there. Next is religions and their origin. I'll touch it later on briefly on that when man, mostly if you go into religious literature, you'll find that all these have an originally formed some kind of some revelation, but as the time progressed, they diverged. But in some areas where if there was no revelation or no book or no guidance, people evolved over a period of time. Because human beings look for some meaning, and they said that if they could put some meaning, they created their own concepts. Some have one God, some will have more than one God, and those concepts evolved out of human thinking over a period of time. This aspect is covered in the book in not in a lot of detail, but it is given there. You can read it yourself as well. Atheists versus followers of God. If you look at the both sides of arguments, you will see that in terms of living their life, whatever concept they are holding, there is no difference in their day-to-day living. Professor Richard Dawkins lives the same way as anybody else who doesn't believe, who believes in God. They get up in the morning same way, they go to the job, they come back, they eat their food and go to sleep. In between, some will go to the mosque probably, some will go to the temple, some will go to the church. and carry out some kind of a worship which has no significance as far as the outside life is concerned. So the concept is really of a personal God between me and my God. As far as my normal life is concerned, you will find no difference between the two individuals. So why does it matter? Natural laws. We see laws everywhere. Our body follows certain laws. Outside we have gravity, we have hydrological cycle, we see natural disasters, we see Earth revolving around the sun and sun revolving around its own self. And there are larger, there is a chemistry, there is a physics, there are sciences, there is mathematics, there is chemistry. So everywhere you will find some order. They say even in a situation where it appears to be a chaos, the sum total of chaos is an order. There is some kind of random working in everywhere. And remember, we haven't come to the end of life yet. The research is going on, so theories which have been discovered today, these may not be true tomorrow. Because as human knowledge expands and develops, things will change, concepts will change. So final word hasn't been written yet. Cause and effect, as I said earlier, that every cause has an effect. If I put my finger in the fire, it will burn. Doesn't matter whether one believes in God or does not believe in God. Whether one knows that whether fire will burn or not. And cause and effect is working everywhere, except the first cause. The creation from nothing. Keep this point in mind. This is a very important point. And it is discussed in this book. What does it mean? What are its implications? Various questions arise in human mind. Why am I here? Why I came to this life uninvited? If we are poor, particularly if you're going through very difficult time, you will say, I wish I was not born in the first place. And this is the fact. You will never see a rich man saying, I wish I was not born. But generally, it's all related to are being miserable, are being difficult in this life. That is where people say that, that is why people who are poor, they are more religious and they pray more as well. Human free will and its application. A lot of people think there is no free will. There are people in America, I think Sam Harris or someone, he thinks there is no. But even if they say that, there is some kind of a predeterminism, that if you have selected one path of life, then you will get the effects of that particular path in life. But end of the day, we all know we make choices and we live by the choices we make in our life. Our life up to this point is sum total of all the effects of our choices. And then if there is God, why he is invisible? If he is, he or she is, or whatever it is. And last one is, do we really need a God? If we don't need a God, why do we pursue that path in any case? Why burden yourself? This is a very important point, because half-hearted individual is always feeling guilty, fearful, vulnerable. I remember I saw Chris Hitchens is a fellow who recently died. And I was listening to his interviews, and I could see that sense of vulnerability in him, that unknownness which is lying beyond that. So, but at least I give him that credit, that he removed the whole concept from his life and he lived his life to the full, as he says, and left this life. Let's go to the next one. So what I've done is, without coming to any conclusion over here from the God slide, I will come to the concept which is put forward by the Quran. So I've left it open-ended in a way that you use your own, choice. Because I'll tell you something very interesting. Once I gave a small presentation in London a few years ago, and when I gave that presentation, I was not sure one or two people who were fully convinced. And after the presentation, I just asked them, I said, do you really think there is a God? And they said, I'm not very sure. But they were fearful of asking any question, because sometimes there is a social pressure and people just conform to it. But this is a very, very important, because the sort of a model we have in life, that dictates our life unwittingly or wittingly. This is a very important point which we must resolve at some point in time in our life. Our physical self follows physical laws. I just had tea. My choice was to take it or not. But the effects what tea will have on my body is not in my control. Try it. We are what we eat, isn't it? The way we live. So there are things we can do, there are things we cannot do. Then the laws take over. I have a choice to eat poison or do not eat poison. But once I've eaten it, then it is beyond me. And same goes for something good as well. Free will. It is a freedom to choose an intent. We have a freedom to choose, and then we have an intent. We make a decision whether to choose it or not. Sometimes choices lie in our head. You can try it. Sometimes you will have 20 choices in your mind, but you will never carry out any of the choices. So intention is very important. Decision making is very important. So if you make a choice, if it is an informed choice based on certain facts, you might benefit from it. If it is an impulsive choice, you might get a harm. It may not go in your favor. We have a strong sense of identity. This thing in the last presentation as well, I explained that if you look at your inner self, you will feel exactly as young as you were 5 years old or 6 years old. All the memories will come back as if it was yesterday. We have a very strong sense of identity which does not change as we live our life. Some people call it soul, but I'll call it I. As they say, I think, therefore I am. Concentrate on that and you will find it doesn't change. It's a changelessness in an ever-changing environment. But self is slightly different from that sense of identity. Sense of identity gives us identification to us that I exist. Give it any name. Call it John, Peter, Ijaz, anything. But it exists. I know it, I exist. We have emotions. Emotions are our desires and our feelings. We have ability to think about thinking. We are the only creature, that is why we have free will, that is why we got freedom to choose and intent and decision making, because we can think about our thoughts. We are self-conscious of our self-consciousness. And this is called metacognition. If you Google it, there is a lot written on that. This is something we must recognize, that we have ability to think about our thoughts. And you can try it while I'm talking, you are analyzing it. While you are hearing it, you are analyzing it. So that means you are listening to me and you are analyzing it. Our senses, from where we get data. It is seeing, hearing, smelling, touching, perceiving even. We don't have to see something, eyes closed, we can perceive. We can imagine. Our memory, which stores everything. So from our past, whatever I'm doing now, it will go into my memory. If something is not in our memory, we can't use it. So that is why during education, if I want to become a doctor, I'll have to memorize the books of medicine. If I'm an engineer, I'll have to memorize all the engineering formulas and others. Because if it is not in the memory, if we lose memory, we lose a tool to call back. But self is different. Self is in the memory, but it is different. It is something which we create ourselves based on all these past education, training, experiences. Everything becomes that. And once it becomes that, with our sense of identity, it becomes one unit. And that gives us strong sense of being. So please remember the word sense of being. Sense of being is something which defines us at any point in time. And it includes even our material things. For example, my sense of being could be the house I have, wife I have, children I have, all the life I have lived, the character I have. So it is a bigger concept than just what is in the memory. So it takes over more or less everything within a human being. And we should be aware of that. This is very important because this point will come later. Our ability to create our sense of being, ourself or self-consciousness, and then is our integrity and freedom as human being. Now this is very important. If you really look at it, each one of us is a complete unit. My pain is mine, not yours. My pleasure is mine, not yours. When I eat something and taste something, that taste is mine, not yours. So even if we are born in a family, I am a separate unit from my parents. My parents cannot give me their sense of being and pass it on to me. It is my choice to accept what they gave me or do not and reject it. Children, come with outline and appearance of parents, but they do not come with their qualifications. So self is entirely our own asset, each one of us asset. So we are a complete unit over there. This is something very important and something on which we should have a pride in a way that we should be happy that I'm so independent. Nobody can affect my thought process unless I allow someone to affect it. Influence of our environment and creating role models. We human beings have a tendency to go for role models because we do not have any inner guidance. We don't have instincts like guidance like animals. And this is a very important point to understand that since we have free will, we have to make choices. Then if a guidance is kept inside us, two will conflict. There will be a contradiction. One will be pulling on one side, another will be pulling on the other side. That is why we can eat anything. We can be vegetarian, we can be non-vegetarian. We can eat stones, we can eat grass. Of course, there are consequences. Fear and uncertainty of death lives with us. We like it or don't like it. And this is something which should actually be a driving force to come to some conclusion in our life, rather than being fearful of it and not discussing it. Because that is how we find out truth. That is how the research is done, rather than saying that, oh, I had a near-death experience. But look for it around us and see if something exists about it. Why not? It is the only certainty in life that all of us will be leaving one day, or all of us will be dead one day. And world and universe is around us. We tend to be very local and geographically bound. Small house, small street, and then maximum will be the nationality. And even nationality, like what's happening in Spain is Catalonia, we also want to carve out and take a small piece away. And none of us takes anything with us when we die. We haven't seen anyone taking. The only thing we take with us are deeds and our thoughts, if these survive. Again, we'll come to that slightly later. How do we think? Our default position is emotive. You can try it yourself. We go to the office, we are very rational. We come home, we have fights, we have arguments, we are happy, we are not happy, we are sad, we lose temper, everything. That is where the divorces and separations take place.